I recently faced something nobody should ever have to say out loud. The HOA just claimed my private pool, then accused me of obstruction. And their excuse? A midnight code update that magically stamped my backyard as HOA property. Funny thing is, the only thing taken that day was their sense of entitlement. Let me start from the beginning. High heels shattered my Saturday silence. Click, click, sharp as rifle shots. I just skimmed the last leaf from the pool that keeps my brother Sam's panic at bay when Karen, our self-crowned HOA monarch, marched in. Shark grinning, clipboard hoisted like a warrant. "Your pool is now the HOA's VIP venue," she barked, thumbs already blasting invites to her influencers. No permission, no preamble, just a rule she'd minted overnight. Sam hugged his sketchbook. My patience snapped. She wanted a party? Perfect. I'd supply the fireworks. Helmet hair, Fort Knox clipboard, predator smile. "Tom," she chirped, louder than the birds she'd just scared silent. Just the man I needed. I met her with a single raised brow. Sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon. Too bad Karen never learned to read it. "Big news," she announced, waving a piece of paper from her clipboard. "The HOA is hosting a very important, very exclusive VIP soiree next Saturday." Oh, goody, I thought. My sarcasm meter was already pegging into the red. I could feel Sam shrinking a bit beside me. He hates confrontations. "And," she continued, beaming, "we've decided, that is, I've decided, that your lovely pool will be the centerpiece." I blinked, slowly. "My pool?" I said, keeping my voice real level. "Karen, you do see the sign, right?" I pointed to the very clear, professionally made, private property, no trespassing sign on the fence gate. It wasn't small, it wasn't hidden. It was, in fact, quite prominent. Sam even painted little flowers around the border of the post it was on, to make it look friendlier. Didn't make it any less serious, though. Karen just sort of sniffed, like the sign was a bad smell. "Oh, that's cute, Tom, but this is an official HOA event, for the good of the community." She tapped her clipboard. "And per the new Event Priority Mandate, Section C, Subsection 4, HOA-sanctioned premier events can utilize designated prime community areas. I've designated your pool area as prime." "Designated?" I repeated. I could feel that gritty part of me starting to wake up. The part that doesn't like being told what to do with my own stuff. "Karen, this isn't a community area. This is my backyard, my property. The deed is in my name. My brother and I live here. This is our home." I kept my voice calm, but there was an edge to it now. Sam looked worried. He was glancing from me to Karen and back again, his sketchbook forgotten. "Now, Tom, don't be difficult," she said, her voice losing its fake cheer and getting that hard, brittle tone she used when she wasn't getting her way. "It's already decided. The flyers are being printed. Very important people will be here. Influencers, even." She said influencers like it was a magic word that should make me roll over and beg to host. "You wouldn't want to cause problems, would you? There are fines, you know. Significant fines for non-compliance with HOA mandates." She waved the paper again, which I presumed was this brand new, probably self-written mandate. I just looked at her helmet hair, her smug face, the clipboard of doom. I thought about Sam, about our peace, about how this woman felt she could just waltz in and take over. "Karen," I said, my voice very quiet now, "this conversation is over. You are not using my pool. You are not hosting a party in my yard. You need to leave my property." Her face got all tight, her eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this, Tom. You'll see. The HOA has rules for a reason." And with that, she spun on her heel, a surprisingly agile move for someone so tightly wound, and stomped back across my patio, through the gate, and was gone. The click-clack faded. Silence descended again. But it wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the calm before the storm kind. Sam looked at me, his eyes wide. "What are we going to do, Tom?" he whispered. I put my arm around his shoulder. "Don't you worry, Sammy," I said. "I'll handle Karen." But deep down, I knew this was just the first shot. Karen wasn't the type to give up. Not when she thought she was right, which was always. And I wondered, just for a second, how far this was going to go. How far would I have to go to protect what was ours? This was definitely not over. Not by a long shot. This wasn't our first rodeo with Karen, not by a long stretch. Ever since she got elected HOA president, Mostly because nobody else wanted the job or the headache. She'd been on a bit of a power trip, a big bit. Before her reign, the HOA was pretty chill. They made sure the communal flower beds at the entrance were tidy, organized a 4th of July, potluck, that kind of thing. Benign, helpful even. But Karen saw the HOA bylaws not as guidelines for neighborly living, but as a weaponized text to enforce her vision of suburban perfection. A vision that usually involved everyone else bending to her will. I remember when we first moved in, about 3 years ago. Sam and we'd saved up for this place. It was a bit of a fixer-upper, but it had good bones. And that pool, well, that was the clincher. Sam had been having a tough time before that. Some health stuff, some anxiety issues, and the idea of him having a peaceful place to relax, to float his cares away, that was huge for me. I'm his big brother. Looking out for him is just what I do. It's not a burden, it's just a fact, like the sky is blue. So we poured our hearts and a lot of sweat into making this house a home. Our first Karen encounter was over the mailbox. Apparently our mailbox, the one that came with the house, was, and I quote, an unapproved shade of beige. Not just beige, mind you, but an unapproved shade. She'd left a notice, a full-page typed letter, detailing the precise Pantone color chip of the community standard beige we needed to adhere to. It included a threat of a daily fine, if not rectified within 7 days. I remember reading it and thinking, is this lady serious? Hank, who lives 2 doors down and had already had his own mailbox baptism by Karen, saw me looking at the letter. He wandered over, shaking his head. Hank is a retired plumber, a widower, with a terrier named Max that's about as yappy as Karen but way more charming. Ah, the beige edict, he'd said, stroking his chin. Classic Karen. Last month it was Mrs. Henderson's wind chimes, said they were creating auditory pollution disruptive to neighborhood serenity. Mrs. Henderson's 85 and deaf as a post. She couldn't even hear the darn things herself. I'd wanted to fight it, the beige thing. It seemed so petty, so ridiculous. But Sam got really anxious about the fine. He started imagining us losing the house over a mailbox. So, I sighed, bought the approved beige paint, which looked almost identical to the old beige, and repainted the mailbox. Karen had actually come by, clipboard in hand, with a paint chip to compare. She squinted, hummed, and finally gave a curt nod. Acceptable, she'd declared, as if bestowing a great honor. That was my first taste of her particular brand of crazy. My wry sense of humor found it almost funny, in a dark way. But the protective side of me, the part that saw Sam's distress, that part filed it away. Then there was the Great Rosebush Rebellion. Sam, who loves gardening, had planted a beautiful climbing rosebush by our front porch. It was stunning, big, fragrant red roses. Karen decided it was obstructing the architectural integrity of the facade. Another letter, more threats. This time, I did a little research, found out the HOA bylaws said nothing about roses or facade integrity beyond general neatness. I wrote her a polite letter back, quoting the relevant, or rather non-relevant sections. She didn't like that. She sent another letter, this one more strongly worded, implying that even if it wasn't explicitly forbidden, it was against the spirit of the community standards, and that the board, which was mostly her and 2 other people who always voted her way, could interpret the spirit as they saw fit. Hank had offered some classic Hank advice. You should plant poison ivy all around it, Tom. Then tell her it's a protective horticultural barrier for the roses. See if she tries to inspect that up close. I appreciated the sentiment, and the visual of Karen itching for a week was briefly entertaining, but I opted for a different route. I talked to a couple of other neighbors, found out they had also had issues with Karen's interpretations. We didn't form a mob or anything, but a few of us started asking more questions at the next HOA meeting. Karen had looked flustered, even a bit angry to be questioned. She'd tabled the rosebush issue for further review, and it quietly died. A small victory, but it showed me she wasn't completely invincible if people pushed back, even a little. It also showed me she held a grudge. She was noticeably cooler to me after that. So this pool thing, this was an escalation, a big one. Taking over my mailbox color was one thing. Trying to dictate my landscaping was another. But commandeering my private pool in my private backyard for her VIP party, that was a whole new level of audacity. This wasn't just about a rule. This was about my home, my sanctuary, Sam's sanctuary. This was about drawing a line. I knew she'd picked our pool because it was the nicest private one in the neighborhood. We'd resurfaced it, put in new tile, landscaped around it beautifully. Sam spent hours out there. It was his happy place. And Karen wanted to turn it into her personal party zone. No, absolutely not. After she'd stormed off, Sam was still looking pale. "She can't really do that, can she, Tom?" he asked, his voice small. I pulled him into a side hug. "No, buddy, she can't. This is our home, not hers." But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Karen had her mandate. She had her clipboard. She had her unshakable belief in her own authority. And she had those influencers coming. She wouldn't want to look foolish in front of them. This was going to be a fight, and as I looked at Sam's worried face, I felt that gritty resolve harden inside me. I'd fought for him before, in bigger ways than this. I'd fight for him now. Karen had no idea who she was messing with. She thought I was just some quiet guy who'd paint his mailbox the right shade of beige if she yelled loud enough. She was about to find out how wrong she was. The question wasn't if I would fight back, but how. And how far would she push me before she realized her mistake? The official notice arrived on Monday. Not in the mail, oh no, that would be too impersonal for Karen. She, or one of her board member cronies, probably Janice from down the street, who always looked like she was sucking on a lemon, hand-delivered it. It was taped to my front door. Taped, like an eviction notice or something. Sam found it when he went to get the morning paper. He brought it in, holding it like it was radioactive. His hand was actually trembling a little. That made me see red, not for me, but for him. This woman was terrorizing my brother over a party. The notice itself was a masterpiece of bureaucratic nonsense. It was titled, Official Mandate and Reservation. Confirmation Prime Community Amenity Utilization. Lot 7. Address my house. It went on for 2 pages. It cited the event priority mandate, again, of course. It detailed the date and time of the Willow Creek HOA VIP welcome party. It even had a little section about liability, stating the HOA would assume liability during the hours of the event only, and that the homeowner was responsible for ensuring the facility was in optimal operational and hygienic condition prior to the event. The nerve of this woman, telling me how to maintain my own pool, then demanding to use it. The best part, or worst part, depending on your perspective, was the schedule. It said HOA representatives, read Karen, would arrive at 10 a.m. on Saturday for pre-event setup and inspection. The party itself was scheduled from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and then it casually mentioned that access to the homeowner's restroom facilities is presumed. Presumed! She was presuming her VIPs could traipse through my house to use the bathroom. My house. Sam's safe space. I crumpled the notice in my fist. Okay, Karen, I thought. Game on. This isn't just about a pool anymore. This is about invasion. Sam was watching me, his eyes big. "What does it say, Tom?" he asked, even though he'd probably skimmed it and knew it was bad. I smoothed out the paper, trying to keep my voice even. "It says Karen is still delusional," I told him. "It says she still thinks she's having a party here." I tried for a wry smile, but it felt a bit forced. Inside, I was seething. This wasn't just an overreach anymore. This was a declaration of war on my property rights, on my peace and quiet. I spent the next hour on the phone with the HOA management company, the people who technically oversee all the HOAs in our broader district. I got a very bored-sounding woman named Brenda. I explained the situation. Brenda sighed a lot. She told me that local HOA boards have broad discretion in interpreting and creating bylaws, as long as they don't conflict with state law or the master deed. She said my best bet was to attend the next HOA board meeting and formally dispute the mandate. The next meeting was in 3 weeks. The party was in 5 days. Helpful. So very helpful. My sarcastic side was having a field day with Brenda. Hank called around lunchtime. "Heard the imperial decree arrived," he chirped. "News travels fast in Willow Creek, especially bad news involving Karen. So, what's the plan, Tom? We gonna barricade the yard? Set up a water balloon catapult on the roof? I've got some old plumbing pipes we could use. Make a real statement." Bless his heart. His ideas were always theatrical. "Tempting, Hank. Really tempting," I said. "Especially the water balloons. But I think we need something a little more legal and a lot less likely to get us arrested." "Legal?" Hank sounded disappointed. "Where's the fun in that? But hey, If you need a witness or someone to accidentally trip Karen into the empty pool later, I'm your guy. He was joking, mostly, I think. I'll keep that in mind, Hank, I said. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to stop this circus before it even starts. He did mention something interesting, though. He said he saw Karen at the community clubhouse earlier, talking very loudly on her phone about non-refundable deposits and guaranteed ambiance for her VIP guests. That little tidbit stuck in my mind. Non-refundable deposits for a party at my pool that she hadn't even secured yet. The plot, as they say, thickened. That evening, Sam was quiet. He barely touched his dinner. He just kept looking out the window towards the pool, like he was saying goodbye to it. That was the kicker for me, seeing him like that. This wasn't just about my rights anymore, or my stubbornness. This was about Sam's peace of mind. This was about our home. That core question echoed in my head. How far will a man go to defend his own? And looking at Sam, I knew the answer was pretty darn far. I sat down with our original house deed and the HOA master document we got when we bought the place. I read through every line. My property lines were crystal clear. The pool, the patio, the entire backyard, all well within my lot. The HOA had jurisdiction over common areas and exterior appearances to some extent. Hello, beige mailbox. But nothing in the master deed gave them the right to just commandeer private property for parties. This event priority mandate Karen was waving around had to be something new, something she'd cooked up, and probably bullied her two cronies on the board into rubber stamping. The more I thought about it, the more a plan started to form. A beautifully simple, perfectly legal plan. Karen wanted my pool to be in optimal operational and hygienic condition. Okay, it would be. Spotless even. She wanted to use my pool. Well, she couldn't use what wasn't there, could she? A slow smile spread across my face. It was time for some urgent, unscheduled pool maintenance. Very urgent. The kind that might take a few days. The kind that might leave the pool, say, completely empty. The challenge was going to be the timing and making sure I was completely within my rights. Karen was going to have her VIP soiree, all right? Just not the one she was planning, and the thought of her face when she saw it, well, that was just a bonus. But first, I needed to make sure all my ducks were in a row. This had to be airtight. The next few days were a blur of quiet preparation and simmering tension. Karen, true to form, didn't let up. On Tuesday, a brightly colored flyer appeared on the community notice board by the mailboxes. Grand VIP soiree at Willow Creek's premier aquatic oasis, it screamed in a curly, obnoxious font. It featured a picture, a slightly photoshopped picture, I noted with wry amusement, of a sparkling pool that looked suspiciously like mine, but with more palm trees than actually existed in our entire state. It promised an afternoon of exclusive networking, gourmet refreshments, and lakeside ambiance. Lakeside? My pool was many things, but a lake it was not. The flyer also mentioned in smaller print at the bottom, hosted by your dedicated HOA president, Karen Smith, and the Willow Creek HOA board. No mention of me, the actual owner of the aquatic oasis. Of course not. Sam saw the flyer on his way back from the store and came home looking like he'd seen a ghost. She's really doing it, Tom, he said, his voice flat. She's telling everyone. I took the flyer from him. The sheer gall of it was breathtaking. This wasn't just an internal HOA document anymore. This was a public advertisement for an event on my private property without my permission. My gritty resolve solidified further. This woman was operating in a fantasy world, and it was time for a reality check. Buddy Hank called naturally. Saw the propaganda, he announced. Premier aquatic oasis. Sounds fancy. Does that mean we all get little umbrellas in our drinks? Then he lowered his voice. Listen, Tom, I was at the clubhouse earlier, picking up Max from his yappy hour. Don't ask. Anyway, Karen was there, lording it over Janice and poor old Mr. Henderson, who's on the board but mostly just nods. She was on her phone again, talking to some catering company. And I heard her say, get this? Yes, 50 VIPs confirmed, plus their plus ones. The entry fee covers deluxe catering and a swag bag. Non-refundable, of course. We have secured the most exclusive venue in Willow Creek. Entry fee, swag bag, non-refundable. This was a game changer. This wasn't just Karen wanting to impress some friends. This was Karen running a commercial venture, selling tickets to a party at my pool, a pool she had no right to use. She was taking money from people based on a promise she couldn't legally keep. This moved things from merely annoying and overreaching to potentially fraudulent. A nasty, tight knot formed in my stomach. This was worse than I thought. She wasn't just an officious busybody, she was actively misleading people for her own gain or status. I hung up with Hank, my mind racing. This new information, this was the twist I hadn't fully anticipated. I thought she was just arrogant, but this was next level. It meant she was going to be desperate. If that party didn't happen, or if it was a disaster, she wouldn't just look foolish in front of her influencers. She might have angry ticket holders demanding refunds she'd already implied were non-refundable. Maybe she'd already spent the money. This made her more dangerous, more unpredictable. That evening, I laid it all out for Sam. I told him about the entry fees, the non-refundable tickets. He looked horrified. She's cheating people, he said, his quiet nature giving way to a spark of indignation. Using our pool to do it! That little spark in him, that was good to see. It meant he wasn't just scared, he was angry too. Exactly, Sammy, I said. And that's why we have to be smart about this. My original plan was simple. Drain the pool, put up a closed for maintenance sign, and let Karen deal with the fallout. Nice, clean, legal. But now, knowing she'd taken money, knowing she was on the hook financially and reputationally to these 50 VIPs and their plus ones, the stakes were higher. The fallout would be bigger. And part of me, the wry, sarcastic part, couldn't help but anticipate the sheer gloriousness of that implosion. But the protective part, the gritty part, knew I had to be careful. Karen cornered would be Karen at her worst. I got out the heavy-duty submersible pump I'd bought a while back for emergencies. I checked the hoses, the power cord. I made a list. Pool closed, urgent owner repairs, sign, large, clear letters. A copy of my property deed, a copy of the HOA's own master bylaws, the real ones, not Karen's fantasy addendums, and my phone, fully charged, ready to record if needed. I felt like a general planning a campaign. This wasn't just about defiance anymore. It was about justice, in a small, suburban way. It was about protecting what was mine, and by extension, showing this tin pot dictator that she couldn't just trample over people. Sam watched me. "Are you sure about this, Tom?" he asked. "She's going to be so angry." "Oh, I'm counting on it, buddy," I said with a grim smile. "But angry is one thing, being in the right is another, and we are in the right." I spent Friday evening going over everything one last time. The weather forecast for Saturday was perfect party weather, sunny and warm, perfect for a pool party, or perfect for revealing a very empty, very unavailable pool. The stage was set. All the players were ready, and Karen had absolutely no idea what kind of opening night she was in for. This was going to be more than just a ruined party. This was going to be an unmasking, and the thought of it gave me a certain grim satisfaction. She'd pushed and pushed, and now she was about to find out what happens when you push someone like me too far. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, just as predicted. The kind of day that normally would have me and Sam out by the pool early, enjoying the quiet before the neighborhood fully woke up. But today was different. Today was D-Day, or more accurately, Drain Day. I was up before sunrise, a mug of strong coffee in my hand, going over the plan in my head one last time. Sam was still asleep. I wanted to let him rest. He'd been on edge all week, and today was likely to be eventful. My first step was a preemptive strike of sorts. I typed up a very polite, very formal letter addressed to Karen and the HOA board. It stated quite clearly that the pool and surrounding patio area at my address were undergoing urgent and essential owner-initiated maintenance, starting immediately, and would be unavailable for any use until further notice. It cited my rights as a property owner to maintain my property. It wished them well with their alternative arrangements for their VIP soiree. I made 2 copies, one for Karen and one for my records. I even thought about sending one to the influencers she was so keen on, but decided that might be overkill, for now. Around 7 a.m., I saw Janice, Karen's main lemon-sucking board crony, walking her poodle. I casually strolled out to my mailbox, letter in hand. "Morning, Janice," I said, with a cheerfulness I definitely didn't feel but knew would annoy her. "Could you do me a huge favor and give this to Karen? It's rather important HOA business." She looked at the envelope suspiciously, then at me, then back at the envelope. "What is it?" she asked, her voice already sour. "Just a little update about my property," I said airily. "You know, keeping the board informed, regulations and all that." She snatched the letter with a sniff and continued her walk, the poodle yapping at her heels. Perfect. Karen would get the news, but not directly from me barging in. More deniability for me, more frustration for her when she couldn't immediately confront me. Then, the main event. Operation Drainpipe. I wheeled the submersible pump to the edge of the deep end. The pool looked beautiful, sparkling clean, innocently inviting, almost ashamed to empty it. Almost. I attached the long discharge hose, running it out to the storm drain access at the far edge of my property, making sure it was all legit and not violating any city codes about water discharge. Last thing I needed was another front to fight on. I double-checked everything. Pump ready, hose secure, power connected. I took a deep breath. Here we go. With a flick of the switch, the pump hummed to life. Water started gushing out the hose, a steady, powerful stream. It was surprisingly loud, the pump's motor, and the whoosh of the water. But it was also a deeply satisfying sound. With every gallon that flowed out, Karen's party plans flowed out with it. I settled into a lawn chair with another coffee, a book I wouldn't actually read, and prepared to supervise. This was going to take hours. Draining thousands of gallons of water isn't a quick job. Sam woke up around 8:30 a.m., drawn by the sound. He came out onto the patio, rubbing his eyes, then stopped dead when he saw the pump and the rapidly diminishing water level. A slow grin spread across his face. "You're really doing it," he said, a note of awe in his voice. "Yep," I replied, taking a sip of coffee. "Urgent maintenance, you know. Can't be too careful with pool hygiene when VIPs are expected." He chuckled, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from him in days. He pulled up a chair next to me. "Can I help?" he asked. "You can help me keep an eye on things," I said, "and maybe fetch more coffee. It's going to be a long morning." Hank, ever vigilant, must have heard the pump too. Around 9 a.m., he ambled over, Max trotting beside him. He peered at the draining pool, then at me, a huge grin splitting his face. "Maintenance, huh?" he said, winking. "Very thorough maintenance, the best kind. Heard Karen got a little love letter from you this morning. Janice looked like she'd swallowed a wasp when she passed my place." He cackled. "So, this is the plan. I like it. Elegant, simple, drives the point home like a 9-inch nail." He offered to bring over some donuts. "Gotta keep up your strength for all this hard work," he said, practically beaming. By 9:45 a.m., the water level was down by several feet. The colorful tile border was fully exposed, looking stark and strange. The shallow end was almost empty. It was happening, and right on cue, as if summoned by the sheer audacity of my actions, Karen's car screeched to a halt at the curb in front of my house. The pre-event setup and inspection team had arrived. This was it. The moral crossroads had long since been passed. This was pure, unadulterated defense of hearth and home. And honestly, it felt pretty good. Karen was about to see her carefully laid plans go right down the drain, literally. I took a calm sip of my now lukewarm coffee and waited. I had a feeling the quiet part of the morning was officially over. Karen practically flew out of her car, clipboard already in hand, Janice scuttling behind her like a nervous shadow. Her eyes, magnified by her severe glasses, scanned my front yard, probably looking for signs of his party prep, festive balloons, catering trucks. What she found was me, sitting calmly in a lawn chair, Sam beside me, and the distinct, unmistakable sound of a heavy-duty pump chugging away. Her head swiveled towards the backyard, and even from the front, I could imagine her internal processors whirring, trying to make sense of the scene. She marched up my driveway, heels clacking angrily. "Tom!" she barked, not even a pretense of neighborly politeness now. "What is the meaning of this? What is that noise? The setup crew is due any minute." I stood up slowly, deliberately. "Morning, Karen. Janice." I gave a little nod. "Lovely day for it, isn't it?" My dry sarcasm was probably lost on her in her agitated state, or maybe it just fueled the fire. I could almost see the smoke coming out of her ears. Don't you lovely day me, Tom, she snapped. I got your ridiculous letter, urgent maintenance, today. Are you insane? She was practically vibrating with indignation. Janice just hovered in the background, wringing her hands, looking like she wished the earth would swallow her. Sam, to his credit, stayed put, though he was gripping the arms of his chair pretty tightly. I was proud of him for not bolting. My protective instincts flared, but I kept my voice calm and steady. This was a performance in a way, and I had the leading role. Insane? No, Karen. Responsible? Yes, I replied, matching her volume with quiet firmness. Pool safety is paramount. I discovered a potential issue late yesterday. Couldn't risk it, not with, 50 VIPs and their +1s expected? I let that hang in the air for a moment. Her eyes narrowed. She knew that I knew about the tickets. Hank's intel had been invaluable. This was the first twist I was throwing at her directly. The knowledge that her little money-making scheme wasn't a secret. That's neither here nor there, she sputtered, flustered for a split second before her usual arrogance reasserted itself. This maintenance is clearly a deliberate attempt to sabotage the HOA's VIP event, an event for the good of the community. You signed the HOA agreement. You are obligated to comply. She was waving the crumpled letter I'd sent her, as if it were proof of my villainy. Actually, Karen, I said, pulling out my own neat, crisp copy of the property deed and the HOA master bylaws. I'm obligated to maintain my property, which I am doing, and I'm obligated to follow the actual HOA bylaws, which say nothing about commandeering private residences for parties. This pool, this yard, it's all mine. See? I held up the deed, pointing to the relevant section outlining my property lines. My private property, not a community asset for you to rent out. Her face was turning a fascinating shade of mottled red and white. That event priority mandate supersedes any prior interpretations, she insisted, her voice rising in pitch. The board approved it. It's official. Was that before or after you sold non-refundable tickets, Karen? I asked very quietly. This was a critical point. Was she going to dig herself deeper, or would she see the precipice? She stared at me, speechless for a moment. The mention of the tickets, the money, clearly hit a nerve. This was the part of her plan she probably thought was foolproof, her little secret revenue stream. Janice gasped faintly behind her. Even she looked shocked that I knew. This was a crucial moment. My moral crossroads had been about how to defend my home. Do I just make it unusable, or do I expose her? I'd chosen both. And now, seeing her face, knowing she was caught not just in an act of overreach, but in something that smacked of deceit, I felt a grim sense of justification. This wasn't just about my pool. It was about her abuse of power, her belief that she was above accountability. The tickets are irrelevant, she finally managed, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. This is about community spirit, about showing Willow Creek in its best light. And you, Tom, you are being deliberately obstructive and selfish. Selfish? I raised an eyebrow. Wanting to control who uses my own home, my own pool, especially when my brother's peace and quiet is at stake? That's selfish? Or is it selfish to sell access to something that isn't yours to sell, Karen? I kept my gaze steady on hers. Sam shifted in his chair, and I subtly put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. He needed to see that I wasn't backing down, that we were in this together. Hank chose that moment to wander out to his own front yard, ostensibly to check his mail, but I knew he was enjoying the show. He gave me a discreet thumbs up when Karen wasn't looking. His presence, even at a distance, was a small comfort. It reminded me I wasn't entirely alone in this fight, that other neighbors were tired of Karen's reign too. Karen seemed to deflate slightly, but then her eyes hardened again. "This isn't over, Tom," she hissed. "The party is in a few hours. Those VIPs are coming. You better hope the pool is ready, or the fines will be astronomical. And I'll see to it that everyone in Willow Creek knows who ruined the most important event of the year." She spun on her heel and marched back to her car, Janice scrambling after her. They sped off, leaving a cloud of angry dust and the lingering hum of my pool pump. Sam let out a shaky breath. "Wow," he said. "She's really something." "She is," I agreed. "But we're something too, Sammy. We're people who don't get pushed around." The pool was now significantly emptier. The tiles were exposed almost down to the bottom of the shallow end. It looked stark, hollow, a perfect metaphor for Karen's party plans. But she'd made her threat. fines, public shaming. She wasn't going to give up easily. The real action was yet to come when those 50 VIPs and their plus ones started arriving. I just hoped my plan was robust enough to withstand Hurricane Karen's full fury. The next few hours would tell. The hours between Karen's angry departure and the scheduled party time crawled by. The pump chugged along relentlessly, a soundtrack to our defiance. Sam and I mostly sat in a companionable silence, watching the water level drop inch by painstaking inch. He'd calmed down considerably, even sketching a bit, though his drawings were mostly of angry-looking squirrels with Karen's hairstyle. I had to admit, they were pretty funny. My wry humor appreciated his artistic commentary. By around 1 p.m., the pump started to gurgle. The pool was, for all intents and purposes, empty. Just a few puddles in the deep end. The vast expanse of blue tile looked strangely alien in the bright sunlight. It was done. Phase 1, at least. I switched off the pump, coiled the hoses neatly, and stored the equipment back in the shed. Then, the pièce de résistance. I brought out the sign I'd made. Large white foam board with big clear black letters. Pool closed. Urgent owner repairs. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. I even added a little drawing of a sad-faced swimming pool, a touch of Sam's influence. I propped it up right at the entrance to the patio, where no one could miss it. It looked official. It looked serious. It looked like the absolute opposite of a party invitation. Buddy Hank came over with a tray of sandwiches and lemonade around 1:30 p.m. "Fortification for the troops," he announced cheerfully, surveying the empty pool with immense satisfaction. "Magnificent, Tom. A thing of beauty. Or, a beautiful lack of things. Water, mostly." He peered at my sign. "Ooh, violators will be prosecuted. Strong, I like it. Got your camera ready? This is going to be better than reality TV." He wasn't wrong. I had my phone in my pocket, fully charged, video recorder on standby. Just in case. Right on cue, at precisely 1:55 p.m., the first cars started to arrive. Not beat-up neighborhood jalopies, but shiny SUVs, expensive-looking sedans. Karen's VIPs. They parked along the street, well-dressed people emerging, looking around with an air of expectation. I saw a few of them consulting their phones, probably checking the address on Karen's fancy flyer. My stomach did a little flip. This was it. Showtime. Sam retreated inside the house, watching from the window. He wasn't up for this part, and I didn't blame him. This was my fight to finish. Hank, however, pulled up a chair on his own porch, a big grin on his face, ready for the matinee. Karen's car pulled up a few minutes later. She got out, plastered on a brittle smile, ready to greet her guests. She hadn't seen the pool area yet, I realized. She was probably expecting me to have caved, to have refilled it magically. Oh, the disappointment awaiting her. She started leading a small group of early arrivals, a woman in a very large hat, a man who looked like he'd just stepped out of a yachting magazine, towards my gate, and then she saw it. First, my sign. Her smile froze. Her eyes darted past the sign, to the patio, to the gaping tiled emptiness where a sparkling pool should have been. The color drained from her face. I mean, completely. She looked like she'd seen a tax auditor at her own birthday party. The woman in the large hat stopped, peering. "Karen, darling," she trilled, her voice like cracking ice. "Is this a joke? Some sort of avant-garde artistic statement?" Karen was speechless. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, but no sound came out. The man who looked like a yachtsman frowned. "We were promised an aquatic oasis, Karen. This looks more like an archaeological dig." More guests were arriving, starting to cluster at the end of my driveway, murmuring, looking confused. The scene was rapidly devolving from exclusive soiree to bewildered mob. Then Karen found her voice, and it wasn't pretty. "Tom!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. She stormed towards me, ignoring her stunned guests. "What have you done?" Her face was contorted with rage. "This is vandalism. You vandalized HOA property. I'm calling the police." And she actually whipped out her phone and started dialing 911, her voice rising hysterically. "Yes, police. I need officers immediately. There's been vandalism. A community event has been sabotaged. My reputation is ruined." This I hadn't fully anticipated, the 911 call with accusations of vandalism. Overreach, yes. Threats, yes. But a false police report? That was a bold and frankly stupid move on her part. The arriving guests were now looking very uncomfortable, some backing away slowly. The woman in the large hat had already retreated to her car. The influencers Karen had been so eager to impress were probably already live tweeting the disaster. I stayed calm, let her dig her own hole. This was playing out even better than I'd hoped, in a twisted sort of way. The action was peaking all right, and Karen was the star of her own tragic comedy. Now, we just had to wait for the cops. This was about to get a whole lot more official, and a whole lot worse for Karen. The sirens cut through the afternoon air sooner than I expected. 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing, drawing even more attention from the neighbors, who were now starting to peek out of their windows. This was escalating into a full-blown neighborhood spectacle. Karen, looking triumphant and victimized all at once, rushed towards the first officer stepping out of his car. "Officer, thank heavens!" she exclaimed, pointing dramatically at me, then at the empty pool. "This man, Tom Henderson, he's deliberately vandalized HOA property. He's ruined our vital community fundraising event. He drained the pool to sabotage us." The officer, a tall, serious-looking man with a name tag that read Miller, looked at me, then at the pool, then back at Karen. He had that seen-it-all-before expression that cops get. His partner, Officer Diaz, a younger woman, started calmly talking to the bewildered group of Karen's remaining VIP guests, who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. A few were already filming on their phones. Oh, this was going to be viral. My wry side almost wanted to offer them better camera angles. "Ma'am," Officer Miller said to Karen, his voice polite but firm, "let's just calm down a moment. You're saying this gentleman vandalized this pool?" He gestured towards the empty basin. Karen nodded vehemently. "Yes, it's an HOA-designated prime community area. We had it reserved for an official event. He drained it out of spite." Now, this was the moment that could have gone sideways. This was twist number 2 in the making. For a heart-stopping second, Officer Miller looked at me with a stern expression. "Sir," he said, turning to me, "is this true? Did you drain this pool today, knowing there was an event scheduled?" My heart hammered. This was where Karen's official-sounding title and her convincing hysterics could actually work against me, at least initially. For a moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. What if they just took her word for it? What if this whole thing backfired? I took a deep breath, kept my voice level. "Officer," I began, "my name is Tom Henderson. This is my private property." I held out the copy of my deed. "This pool is on my land, not common HOA land, and yes, I drained it for urgent maintenance." I pointed to my sign. As you can see, it's clearly marked as closed for owner repairs. Officer Miller took the deed, glanced at it, then looked back at Karen. "Ma'am, is this pool on Mr. Henderson's private lot, or is it a community pool owned by the HOA?" Karen sputtered. "Well, it's in his yard, yes, but the HOA has oversight. We have a mandate, the Event Priority Mandate. It allows us to use prime areas for community good." She fumbled for her clipboard, thrusting her ridiculous self-made mandate at him. Officer Miller barely glanced at Karen's paper. He was still looking at my deed. He then walked over to the edge of the patio, looked at the empty pool, then at the sign. He conferred quietly with Officer Diaz for a moment. Diaz had finished taking brief statements from a couple of the rapidly departing VIPs, who mostly looked embarrassed to be involved. I saw Hank give me a subtle wave from his porch. He was probably loving this. Then Officer Miller turned back to Karen. His face was unreadable. This was it. The moment of truth. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying clearly, "according to this deed and the plat map, we can easily verify this entire backyard, including the pool, is indeed Mr. Henderson's private property. He has every legal right to perform maintenance on his own pool, including draining it whenever he deems necessary." Karen's jaw dropped. But our event, our VIPS, the mandate..." "Ma'am," Officer Miller continued, his voice now a little sharper, "an internal HOA rule or mandate cannot supersede a homeowner's legal property rights. If this is private property, you have no authority to reserve it or host an event here without the owner's explicit permission. Did Mr. Henderson give you permission to use his pool today?" Karen went very, very quiet. Her face, which had been flushed with righteous fury, was now pale with dawning horror. "Well, no, not exactly," she stammered. "But he knew about it. He's just being difficult. Difficult or not, ma'am, Officer Miller said. He's within his rights. Draining his own pool is not vandalism. However, he paused, and his gaze on Karen became very stern. Calling 911 and filing a false report of vandalism is a misuse of emergency services, and attempting to use private property without permission, especially if you were charging for access, could have other legal implications. That hit Karen like a physical blow. The mention of charging for access. Officer Diaz, who had clearly heard that part from the guests, raised an eyebrow. The remaining handful of VIPs, who were still lingering, started murmuring amongst themselves, looking even more incensed. One of them, a man in a sharp suit who I vaguely recognized as a local lawyer Karen was probably trying to impress, stepped forward. "Excuse me, officer," he said. "Did you say she was charging for this? I paid $100 for a ticket to an exclusive poolside soiree. If this is private property and the owner didn't agree, that's highly problematic." Oh, this was beautiful. Karen was imploding in real time. Her carefully constructed world of self-importance was crumbling around her. And it wasn't even me doing the final demolition. It was her own actions, her own lies, catching up with her in front of an audience. The scene quickly unraveled for Karen. Officer Miller and Officer Diaz spent another 10 minutes taking down details. They looked at Karen's flyers, which some of her disgruntled VIPs were now waving as evidence of misrepresentation. They took my statement, which was short and to the point. Private property, owner maintenance, no permission granted for any party. I even showed them the polite letter I'd had Janice deliver to Karen that morning, informing her the pool would be unavailable. That little piece of documentation was golden. It showed I hadn't just sprung this on her at the last minute maliciously. I'd given her notice. Karen tried to argue, to bluster, to cry. She accused me of being unneighborly, of having a vendetta against the HOA, of single-handedly destroying community spirit. But the officers were having none of it. Officer Miller, in particular, looked like he'd dealt with 1,000 Karens in his career. He listened patiently, then calmly reiterated the facts. My property, my rights, her overreach, her problem. The local lawyer VIP was particularly incensed. He started talking about demanding refunds, about potential class action if enough people had paid for these non-existent party tickets. He was using terms like fraudulent misrepresentation and breach of contract. Karen looked like she was about to faint. Her face was ashen. The clipboard, her symbol of authority, lay forgotten on the ground where she'd dropped it. Her helmet hair even seemed to droop a little. Hank, unable